Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. Here I am outside Metternich's house in London, number 43 Eaton Square. And as you can see, these are very fine buildings with that cream-coloured finish. So who was Prince Metternich? Well, Clemens von Metternich was born in the Rhineland, but he's best known as being the Chancellor of Austria from, oh my goodness, about 1815 till 1848. Not quite sure I got that first date correct. And he was notorious as a reactionary, trying to uphold the settlement of post-Napoleonic Europe. So he moved to Austria-Hungary, well, Austria I should say. Those days it was the Holy Roman Empire. And as Voltaire said, it was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire. It was most of Central Europe, but based around Austria, German as his official language, and the capital at Vienna, and the Habsburg dynasty ruling. However, it was, strictly speaking, it was not hereditary, and each dynast had to be elected. There are only about 7 electors, like the Archbishop of here and the electoral prince of wherever it was. So it wasn't a mass electorate, and that had been going since, oh my God, the time of Charlemagne. So people often say the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation. Well, it was a lot of southern Germany, what we now call Austria, Hungary, southern Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, a bit of Romania that we call Transylvania, Slovenia, some of Croatia. It waxed and waned. A bit of what now we call the Ukraine, actually. So anyway, Napoleon was a great threat to that. Napoleon had smashed them, and in 1806 forced the Holy Roman Empire to dissolve. Most of them became the Austrian Empire. So when Napoleon finally met his Waterloo in 1815, sanity was restored, as Metternich would see it. So he was an ultra-conservative, and he believed in the divine right of monarchs, things like that. Things such as freedom of expression and freedom of assembly, these were anathema to him, and he didn't want any sort of elected legislature. The coachman of Europe, people called him, as in Europe went wherever he led. So he was often an ally of Russia in this reactionary cause, and he detested all notions of liberalism and reform, and sent Austrian troops around Europe putting down revolts. When I say Austrian, they're not necessarily the people we would consider to be Austrian to these days, ethnically Austrian or German speaking. There were conscripts, could be from what we now call the Ukraine or Romania or Croatia and so on. Nevertheless, conscripted into this multi-ethnic, multilingual army, but the officers could all speak German. The officers were all of the German stroke Austrian ethnicity, or in a few cases Hungarian. The one thing is, this was very pricey, keeping the system going. And there were others in the Austrian elite, such as his rival Kohlrath and then later Schwarzenberg, who argued that this was way too costly. He also maintained serfdom. That ordinary farm labourers, and that was most people, they were renting a farm, paying rent to the landlord, having to do unpaid labour in addition to that, unpaid road work, things like that. Couldn't just simply leave the farm and do another job, needed permission. So that was going on in the Austrian Empire till 1848. You can see in Bratislava where that was abolished for the Kingdom of Hungary. When I say Bratislava, in those days known as Pressburg to the Germans, or Poszczony to the Hungarians. So anyway, February 1848, there were banquets in Paris, the Banquet of Mayors, and anyway, there was a revolt, and Louis-Philippe Égalité was overthrown, and then came the Second Republic. So Metternich said, we can't possibly stand for this. He didn't like Louis-Philippe, this Orleanist king of France. Metternich was was a legitimist, said let's bring back the Bourbons, the French dynasty who'd been there before the revolution and after 1815 for quite some years. So he was going to raise taxation to fund an army to go to France and smash Louis-Philippe, reverse the revolution, restore the monarchy. But anyway, there was a run on the banks in Vienna, and the Viennese were not having it. There was a revolution. He was ousted. His situation had been helped by having a nincompoop of an emperor whom he could easily manipulate, who was really mentally subnormal. So he came here, retired here, a grand old man of Europe, but he was detested by the Liberal Party here. A lot of the Conservatives were not too keen on him either, because he really disliked parliamentarianism. Anyway, he was fated by a few reactionary figures, and he spent most of the rest of his life here. He was eventually able to return to Vienna and retire, though he was a hate figure for liberal socialists and the like. They felt that he was someone who was a tyrant who had oppressed the people and sent people to prison simply for saying things. Beethoven, for example, the composer, abominated him. Well, that is this very historical figure, Metternich.